Welcome everybody to another edition of Millennials Are Killing Capitalism Live. It's very good to be with you. Um, I, you know, this was not an expected live stream today. Actually, we didn't have anything on the schedule until next week. On next Friday, we have Alex Avina coming in to do Imperial 80s, and we're going to talk about Three Amigos. But until then, there wasn't anything on the schedule. And this morning, I uploaded a video, which, I don't mind saying what it was, although that could get me in trouble, I guess. But it was a clip from the live stream we had like about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago with Lara Sheehi. And the context of the clip basically was talking about how, in the context of states living, existing in proximity to Israel, which frequently transgresses the sovereignty, bombing, and occupying surrounding territories, that if states are not going to provide military resistance to those activities, that there is a necessity to have armed resistance groups in order to fulfill that duty, that role in order to preserve the sovereignty of states, right? So that was the context of the discussion. It was a 5-minute clip. I uploaded it to YouTube, and it hadn't even gone live yet. It was not public. I had not made it a public post. And initially, actually, I'll pull up. I'm going to do a little bit of show and tell here because um, I did take receipts of everything. Um, all right. So initially, I got this. So the first one, you can see the timestamps on this. The first one is at 10:26, and it says all checks complete, no issues found. And all checks, by the way, I mean, there's a content check that they're doing. There's a check for whether it complies with their monetization policies, like all of that stuff. So all checks complete means, as you could see, you can just put publish now. But I didn't yet. And then, as you see, 7 minutes later, you get a community guidelines warning, which again, it's just a warning, right? But it says that it was removed for a community guidelines violation. Now, interestingly, it wasn't actually removed. It wasn't public, but they left it there, and they actually wouldn't let me remove it. Um, so I'm gonna keep telling the story, but we got guests here, so I'm gonna welcome all of my friends to the show, and do a little mini introduction. I feel like everybody knows everybody, but I want to be a good host. So Jared Ball, good to be with you. I mix what I like. Black Liberation Media, somebody who has been through these processes before, which we will talk about today. Um, Lara Sheehi, my other involved party in this transgression here, who
Always the
also has,
case.
yeah, also has plenty of experience with this type of, activity to suppress speech and politics and everything else. Musa Springer, Paranoid Alive, Alive and Paranoid. Check out the book from Iskra Books, also Groundings podcasts. And I mean, and we'll get into this, but Musa, I think, as folks know, has been through some stuff that they've talked about publicly, and some stuff that, probably not, but like, we all remember that your laptop was taken at the crossing back from Cuba a few months ago, right? And so we'll get into that and some other things. And then, of course, my good friend Sina, good to be with you, my friend. There was almost a very different version of this live stream. I have to pull up the initial cover art that I had made for it, because my assumption was that I should say this. Eventually, just to so people feel better, I appealed this decision and won, which I didn't expect to do, even though I've appealed individual demonetizations of episodes before and won and sometimes lost. But I kind of thought like, oh, this is it. Like because and I'll show folks why in a second, but I really didn't think that was gonna be on the table this time. So the original episode art, because Sita was the first person I reached out to, was this. Um, 'Cause Sina's first response was they sent you to the YouTube gulag. Um, so that's why actually the prison is still in the background of the cover art is because I was too lazy to update that after I found out that we weren't permanently demonetized. So a couple other things I just want to show before we get into the discussion. Um, so this is the one like that probably freaked me out the most because the initial stuff you're like, oh, it's a warning, like whatever. So the first thing too is like immediately I log into my YouTube and it's taken away the whole monetization section, right? So like there's just like, oh, the money that I have earned over this month is just gone, like it's vanished. I'm like, what happens to that money now, right? And there's no like I can't even it's just like you are unable to earn revenue on YouTube, right? But this part was then I checked my email, right? And so they suspended it for non-compliance with partner program policies. This may include community guidelines and or copyright issues on your live or deleted videos. Now, did have some copyright stuff last night. Folks probably did notice that, but it was not related to that. Like, and that we were able to fix that. And YouTube, I don't know whether that maybe triggered additional monitoring or closer monitoring on our channel because sometimes I feel like once you get like one strike or whatever, they kind of like not it wasn't a strike, but once they start to demonetize videos and notice things, then they pay a little bit closer attention. But it was the community guidelines that were the thing. And so then they say this thing down here of if you can't resolve your existing copyright or communication community guideline issues, we may reinstate monetization on your account after 3 months if you meet the following criteria. You didn't have any new copyright or community guidelines issues within the past 3 months. Um, you use your account in compliance with our policies, for example, by uploading content you have the right to monetize. Right. So there's more stuff from this that I'll pull up at different points, but I'll actually just leave it there. And Jared, I don't know if you want to jump in and talk about like how kind of similar or different your experience was with Black Liberation Media when they demonetized you all.
So first of all, it's good to be with everybody. Good to see everybody. Peace to everybody, including to what is I'm sure you're also undefeated chat and salute. Uh, yeah, I mean, first of all, it is jarring and disturbing, and even to the extent that I admit I am triggered by like even the permanent red alert that you would see when you log in like you into the studio like I'm triggered by alerts just in general, like in my notifications I turn them off on my phone and all that kind of stuff. I just I'm like I gotta react. And then when you log in, it's just that permanent thing, just as a reminder saying that there is sort of this overlord that is looming and watching forever. uh so there was that, but then as we talked a little bit off air, the key difference in our situation was what was uploaded on our channel had no even pretense to educational or journalistic, scholarly, intellectual investigation. It was just a statement, and they were so the reaction was very swift and harsh. I don't even remember language like I just saw in yours about suspended. It was just you're done. And then no, that's not true. That's not true. It must not be true, because we did get the 90-day promise that turned into the lie. We did get the 90, that, so it was 3 months. If you don't have any other whatevers, we may reinstate. But after the 90-day period, they just moved it into permanent suspension of our monetization. So it is just, and I just want to reiterate or emphasize, maybe it's not a reiteration at this point, that the demonetization is not just financial. It is also what triggers to YouTube and Google to stop showing your videos, stop alerting subscribers when you post stuff. It is the gulag, as you said. And then I also just would quickly say that I don't think it's inappropriate that you didn't make full alterations to the thumbnail. I mean, it may have been temporary, may have been relatively brief, but you did get put in there. There is one waiting for anyone who goes too far. So it is appropriate to be reminded that there is a YouTube gulag of sorts, and there are punishments for overstepping political boundaries. But anyway, that was our basic situation. It was quick, it was harsh, and then the 90-day lie turned into just to be just that.
Yeah, so I mean, I know that I flashed this up for a second, but I like this is also this came to my phone too, right? So like you
Wow.
could see like this is a screenshot of my phone, and it's like, here's what we found, right? And it's like, you are supporting violent criminal organizations, right? And so
And I know we're not supposed to
fortunately,
do stereotypes, but you got the plant in the background. You know what I mean? The tank. I mean, it doesn't convey the most. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean,
You have
I'm
the
just
Arab
saying.
on screen, for fuck's sake.
oh man. Um yeah. Lara, what were your initial reactions?
I mean, it's wild when you put that up and it's just like, criminal activity and sort of terrorism, and then there's my face. I think it's great that there's an Abolish ICE shirt in there, because it's like a redirection of who the real criminals are. But it's also what it's like to live in the world saturated by coercion and saturated, Dylan Rodriguez talks about this, about lexical warfare. And I love this concept that he has, because it's about contouring what is acceptable, not only in terms of speech, but also who gets to narrate that, what are the boundaries of that. And as Jared was just saying, it's a constant, and I had said this to you, Jay, it's a constant drag of coercion that ends up making us feel like we're failing, number one, or that there's any calculus that we could do that would make that outcome different, right? And it's just like the fucking levers are with specific people and entities, and they've already decided the construct of that. And then here we are psychically sort of trying to do all this maneuvering to try to fit within that. But it's already determined who's considered to be a terrorist, what is being supported, what's not being supported, what's allowed to. And the bottom line is here, we were talking about the context of Lebanon in relationship to a genocidal apartheid settler colonial state. And that shit's not demonetized. They get to say whatever the fuck they want and talk about genocide constantly and outright without flinching. And that's what we're up against here. So, I mean, part of it was like expected. And then, of course, I felt awful. And that's relationally what ends up happening also, is this sort of pull into self-discipline, or you think about it, and then there's a relational piece that's involved. Like, you're a dear comrade and friend. And that was very much part of what I was feeling as well. So we were already in this like psychic economy of terror and coercion.
Yeah, and I mean, the funny thing about it, right, is that it's a clip from another conversation that we've already had, right? So on one level, I'm like, this shouldn't, like, how are you flagging something that is already on my channel? that has been there and has been monetized, right? Now, I realize, and these, again, the kind of thoughts that come into your head. I'm like, should I even be talking about that? Should I even be saying that, right? Because then somebody go try to find that video and report it or whatever, right? But that's yeah, I mean, so there was a certain amount of it where I was like, this is just illogical. And I mean, I will say this before I kick it over to our other guests, but shout out to the YouTube worker who had to do the manual review when I appealed it, who like almost immediately said like, this is fine, right? Because I think that's the thing, is these determinations are mostly made by electronic systems, and then there are people behind the scenes who are regular everyday people who may hate their employer as much as we do, right? And look at it and say, well, no, like this actually, this is there's an argument being made here, but you weren't telling people, hey, go join X, right? Like that's not what the argument was, right? And so anyway, I do have some funny stuff I'll share from my time in the gulag, because I went to the re-education camp and I took their quiz. And so I'll share some stories, some pictures from that. But Musa, I want to kick it over to you because you have a lot of different stories and experiences with, more significant and serious, repression and sanctioning and that kind of stuff than I do. And I think it's important to use these conversations to talk about that stuff, because in your case, it's actually also connected to, other political work that you do that also is very important. So.
Yeah, peace to everyone. Really on an all-star lineup, all-star panel here tonight. Appreciative to be here. Also want to just right at the top commemorate today is the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, in which 1,800 majority Black people died at the hands of state neglect. It's very much at the top of my mind and heart today. As someone in the South whose family was related to that. But in terms of repression and censorship, obviously, I think the most apparent incident was earlier this year when, upon returning through the Tampa airport from Cuba, I was held and detained for several hours. I was searched, bodily searched, my items searched, all of my items confiscated from me, all my electronic items, and had to subsequently, of course, be in court and those kind of things. And kind of to the point that was just made, my only crime was a divergent thought, right? Was the idea that I was against a genocide, against imperialism, and that I supported the Cuban Revolution, against the criminal US blockade. And ironically enough, this was not my first time facing this kind of repression, but more so censorship in the past. So while I was a journalist at RT America, which no longer exists, I was actually hired in the weeks following the, at the time, Democratic-led administration attempting to force everyone in the office to register as foreign agents, regardless of nationality, regardless of where they were from. For the crime of, once again, simply having a divergent viewpoint from perhaps CNN and Fox News, right? The entire time that I worked at RT, there was consistent censorship from both local DC administration and then the federal level. And in my last year working there, it was good old YouTube that in fact took the initiative to remove every single RT America and RT America related channel from the platform overnight. So someone like myself, who worked as a digital producer and a news producer and had a lot of my portfolio on that platform, for example, it disappears overnight, right? And so I think what it really brings us to, especially in the case with Millennials Are Killing Capitalism and Black Liberation Media, which are extremely important platforms, is not to be cliche, but we're using the master's tools inside of the master's house on the master's front porch. We're using technology that we do not own or control, and there's inherent contradictions to that in these moments of censorship are made blindly, apparent. I'll also just kind of throw in there too, a few months ago, my TikTok account, I got a 90-day suspension on my TikTok account for promoting a terror-related group. The group was Cuban doctors. The Cuban ELAM, the Latin American Medical Association, and medical schools in Havana, because it is on the state sponsor of terrorism list now officially, I guess I'm not allowed to talk about that on TikTok, and was suspended for 90 days. Not even, talking about any of the groups we typically deem associated with these kind of things. And so, yeah, I think that this kind of censorship, the last thing I'll say before I pass it back, is it also shows that we're doing something right. It shows there's a level of fear, either algorithmically or individually with whoever's behind the keyboard, that actually by speaking out against Zionism and imperialism and these systems, perhaps we actually are doing something that does strike a level of fear in the colonizers.
Yeah. Yeah, on some level, I was thinking of it briefly as a badge of honor before they reinstated me. And so now I don't have that. But yeah, no, I appreciate all of that, Musa. And shout out to you for all of the work that you do. And that's just wild related to the Cuban doctors. Like I didn't know that had risen to that type of, repression. But I think that this language, right, of like supporting violent criminal organizations or non-state armed groups, that they're using all of these different terms, right, um, and or terrorist groups, right, that this is permeating all of the community guidelines of all of these different platforms now, and it's just a tool that's like so easy for them to just whack you with. And a lot of times it'll just be like we said, like a computer, like it's it's AI, it's some kind of bot basically that's like following in and it's like, whoa, they said that, like flag, and you know I mean, fortunately in some cases it does allow for, as Jared was saying, like, oh well, Lara's an academic, she's a scholar, right, she's you know but that's not gonna it's not gonna always, a lot of that, it's still very subjective, like, right, there's no criteria here that are like really well laid out, and so then it leads a lot, inevitably, unfortunately, to self-censorship of like, what how am I gonna phrase this so that I don't risk potentially stepping on some red button, or whatever. So, Sina, my friend, thank you for being willing to join me to break down the YouTube gulag. It's always good to be with you, and yeah, I don't know what you want to jump in with, but I would love to hear from you, man.
No, thank you, everyone. Sorry I was late. I was a few minutes late. I kind of have a sort of series of kill surprise, everyone. Big breaking news here. I have lots to say because there's sort of multiple aspect or sort of axes of this conversation or whatever registers. There's the initial one of specific to the platform of YouTube, which is sort of it's the biggest social media platform by far, and it is the whale of everything. It's just everything. It's the leviathan of this whole system. And then there's the subsequent smaller ones, which are all dying. Oh, a little hard to hear, Sina. Can you guys hear me? Maybe not. Is Siri okay? Okay.
It's a little low, but yeah.
It's a little low. I know what I can do. Let's watch this. Oh wait, no. Is that better? Is that better? I love this thing. DJI, send me free stuff. I know you're sanctioned. Oh, this is relevant, actually. They're sanctioned too. So there's there's a specific thing of YouTube. There's a specific wider question of being a resistoid of any kind on these apps in general, and what that means, and the specific ones to each and every one, and their own strange, unique environments unto all of them, and the rules of them. TikTok being apparently like the most conservative right now, but all of them being bad. But And then there's the sort of there's the sort of zoom out question, which is the entire, like our position as resistoids in this Westoid media sphere, not just like social media, but our audience being other Westoids. That is something that, because that fundamental and the nature of the Westoid information sphere being such that it is a hyper-policed, hyper-indoctrinated, extremely Zionist, extremely American-centered, right? Because this machine of digital surveillance is so omnipresent in our lives. And this is where I want to go sort of the zoom out question, which is, you know, we operate in these fields, in this machinery. This entire machinery is built around one thing, inputting more of ourselves into them. Okay, and so YouTube, and the fact that doesn't just mean like our, you know, spending time on these things, but I mean in the sense of connecting our livelihoods to them, connecting our communities through them, finding our communities. I found all of you through freaking Twitter. So like these are the sinews or the arteries, vassals of this media body that we all reside in, and it is a decrepit, dying media body. And as it dies, it will do loonier and loonier things like destroy its own credibility, destroy its own base. Now, I'm really glad, Musa, you brought up this thing of RT, because I think what happened to the people who work at RT and a whole other channels, like they just overnight, they pushed a button and they said, you're dying now. And like, that's it. And liberals clapped, first of all. First of all, it was the liberals who did it, okay? It was the liberals who did it, first of all. It wasn't even like liberals clapped. They like proudly did it, like overnight. And especially because in our leftoid sphere, God, I'm such an online guy. The way I talk, I listen to myself like, what the hell is wrong with me? But you people understand what I'm saying, chat. Not that I can see you, but you understand what I mean by this. But in our specific sphere, Russia has very little purchase, and nobody bothers to defend like anything. So it's like some freak thing. So I knew the Russian channels, for instance, were all disappeared overnight because of Syria stuff. Like Syria, those channels had some high quality Syria stuff. It wasn't disgusting Al Jazeera takfiri bullshit. Like they had their own problems, whatever. But I watched reams of documentaries of like frontline stuff from Syria, from them. Overnight they disappeared. So I think where I'm going with this is that the way that this operates, the way that this like regime of censorship operates is that there are certain red lines. And if you cross if you cross those red lines, then you are warned or you are deleted, depending on the severity of those red lines. And the red line you obviously caused, Lara, was Hezbollah. You cannot say good things about Hezbollah. You cannot even say the word. Sorry, I shouldn't even said it. I literally pointed this out earlier because saying it triggers it. And so like even saying like you can't put the face of Hassan Nasrallah on Instagram. You can't put Qasem Soleimani's face on Instagram. And they use these terrorism laws as the pretext to enact this censorship regime. So then on top of that, you are put on the back foot. Forget what that at the global level, for what it does at the individual level, because this is all targeted to individuals, because ultimately we're all just fucking individuals on these apps and we have our phones connected to them as individuals, and we don't have like people power on these apps insofar as like being connected through them. Like outside of them, meeting on them is another thing, but like on them, we are owned by them. And so that strange, that strange sort of thing that we're in, where if you cross these red lines, you're out, right? Like, and the red lines sometimes shift, sometimes they're kind of strange, but I think at the last thing I'll say is that I have no experience with any of this because I've never monetized and I've never bothered to monetize. And the reason why is that I learned is that it's better to just participate in the system and use it for promoting my show and getting my show exposed to new people. And it's worth more to me, especially at my scale. I mean, my shows don't exactly do big numbers, and it's not worth it. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I've never actually tried, but I realized that my leash, my ideological leash, would get a whole lot shorter than if I started to monetize. So I made a choice at the beginning never to monetize on YouTube because it wasn't worth the hassle. And this is like, I think as an Iranian, I'm used to this. I'm used to being shut out of everything. I'm used to and I'm not I'm just doing this from secondhand experience of other Iranians, like my cousins and stuff, and like what I hear, and that sense of you're locked out. And obviously Cubans have been doing this longer than Iranians on that front too. But that sense of just you're not allowed in. This is the no homers club. That is so psychologically isolating. And that's the real violence, I think. Forget the career stuff, forget the numbers, forget it's that feeling of you're a freak and we don't want you here. Even though we have all these other millions of freaks who are way freakier than you. We don't want you. This is the no homers club. Okay? So this is my general view of that's the layers of all this. There's it begins begins and ends with your own psychological being of being a media person and having your hands tied or cut off or whatever, and being my work has disappeared, like Musa's crazy story of just they eradicated all that work. Rachel Blevins, same thing. Abby Martin, just overnight, years of their life erased. That's I mean, yeah, it's a shame that we live on these systems. Maybe that's a different conversation.
Yeah, appreciated, Sina. I always love the color commentary. So somebody asked, if you don't monetize, does that lessen your chances of getting suspensions or bans? Does that make them scan your content less? And then someone else said, I've seen channels that aren't monetized that still get bans and copyright strikes. I do think that it lessens it. I do think that when you are monetized, you are basically agreeing in exchange for not a lot of money. I was excited about this month that I might, by the end of August, get to $400 in ad revenue for the month on all of the 250 whatever videos that we have on here. And that's not a lot of money. It's even in comparison to our Patreon, it's not. But it's also it gets to be enough where then it's oh, if I lose that, that's 300, 400 more dollars that I need to try to get people to give me every month. And I'm well, shouldn't I get these capitalist corporations? I'm on their platform. Shouldn't I get them to pay something, into this content that they're all benefiting from me making anyway, right? So this is part of my mindset going into it. If I were to do it all again, I don't know what I would do. I mean, I think Sina's point is good. I think it's why Electronic Intifada is not monetized, right? I don't think Anti-Empire Project, right, is not monetized, right? So a lot of the anti-imperialists, resistance-oriented kind of media doesn't. But I know even Electronic Intifada still has to do all of the editing of, for instance, the resistance report, because they could still violate the terms of these rules just by showing. So I think you're still responsible to the community guidelines, actually, even if you're not monetized. I think it's just that there's a little bit more wiggle room because they're not paying you anything. But I don't know if you know anything about that, Jer. Or just want to jump in with
I mean, I do know just from the alerts that even demonetized, we will get this is a copyright warning, if not a strike. And then it'll even say, even though they've demonetized us, it'll even sometimes say, if you do monetize this, whoever will get the money, because it's still it's there's still it may lessen the chance that you get some sort of penalty, but it doesn't absolve of. It's not like if you're not monetized, you can just come on here and do whatever you want. I did just want to quickly say, as an overlap, Musa brought up, I think importantly, this anniversary of Katrina, and it reminded me that this is sort of the trick bag that I keep finding, that I think we're all continuously in, and to one form or in one form or another. When Katrina happened, I was doing pirate radio in Washington, D.C. And I remember vividly what I played and what I said would have us all in a real gulag if it were tried here on YouTube. But the problem was, I think, maybe 10 people heard it, literally 15, I don't know, 30 on a good night. I mean, so, and then I was, and from there going to WPFW or Pacifica Radio, some considered that selling out, like going from the pirate radio community and all that, and I'm not mad at that, but the point being, the question was, but that's a 50,000 watt station. It reaches all over the place. It targets a largely Black working class radical community. There's all these other ways to rationalize, but then where do you exactly draw the line? And then there are always, in terms of how much of a reach you really intend to have, and what value it would be to have a bigger reach. Because at some point you could just be talking to a whole bunch of, whatever. I mean, just a whole bunch of people who you have large numbers, but people who are not going to move or be moved by what you're saying. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that in there, and just for consideration.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to say, we talked a little bit about this offline, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but
no, it's good, whatever.
Like, having been through these different experiences that you've been through, do you notice yourself self-censoring in certain ways?
Absolutely.
Or like,
So yeah, what I remember that is, yeah, what I was sharing with you is that I would say probably not more than once a year at this point, but I do, every so often somebody, as just happened the other day, will reach out to me and say, I remember you on PFW and your show was way better then. What you're doing now is in some, I've had some harsh language, and I agree with them. I'm like, you're right. But I can't play what I played on PFW. I can't say what I'm aware that I can't say. So it's either I do this version of Jared on YouTube or I go elsewhere. And I was elsewhere, and it was what it was. So I really don't know. I don't know what, but absolutely. I'm self-censoring all the time. I mean, this is even discussed in I mean, we were even talking about this in grad school in media study. This is people write about self-censorship. It's in my way of thinking of it, it's an intended part of the mechanism to get people to self-police. And it's a version of that thing that is attributed to Hoover, where he said the goal isn't to put an agent in everybody's meeting, it's to make everybody think there's an agent in every meeting. And it works like that. So yeah, I absolutely self-censor.
And now they don't even need an agent. There's 5 agents in the room if there's 5 people in the room, because their phones do all that work.
There you go.
That's the analog. You were sorry to jump in, but like that analog thing you were doing, you couldn't monitor that in real time and react quickly. It took a while. Someone would have to sit there, record, transcribe, and they have to invest a bunch of resources. Then they would have to find out who you are, where you're, you know what I mean? Now we hand that information to them. Like, I'm right here. Here, come, squish me like a bug one day, please. Like, we exist under their feet. And, you end up just wait. I sometimes just wait. I'm like, okay, maybe today's the day where it happens. But I don't know. Maybe I'm also small. I'm too small potatoes for these people. I don't think anything actually stops them. But like, it's not, I mean, and maybe there will come a time. Maybe a censorship regime will intensify. Maybe, Jay, this is just a shot across the bow for all of us to like, remember this, like, don't forget we're watching you or whatever. Maybe that's why this whole system exists. Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, here's my question to you guys, though. The bigger thing looming over this is Patreon, right? Patreon through, I was waiting during remember the initial insanity? Musa, I'm sure you have insane stories around this, but the insanity around when the first Ukraine, when like Russia invaded and whatever, like that was the greatest astroturfing campaign I've seen in a long, long time. And the way they just eradicated a bunch of people. But then I kept waiting during that time. I was like, okay, Patreon. What will Patreon be part of this? Because Patreon, I mean, now mind you, maybe it wasn't a good test case because I don't think there's that many pro-Russia people operating in the Westoid media sphere to begin with. I think it's relatively, and so they couldn't, I mean, maybe some, I don't know, maybe they use obviously they use the RT stuff to nail all of you guys, but in general, it's like a small pool to draw to like go out and make an example. But I was waiting post October 7th for Zionists to go after Patreon, because that's like, to me, looks like a soft target for them. Like what, it would be complicated to like pressure Patreon into dropping us. Now I say that with the qualification of that would actually be bad for Patreon. That would actually be very bad for Patreon, because part of what Patreon offers is an island of ideological safety. Is that you can be like a porno anime dude, or you could be like a resistoid whatever, or you could be like, anything, and they don't care. It's like, it's the old internet over there still, somehow. And maybe because, I mean, they do care. I'm not, but in general, they have a pretty wide. I've seen like I haven't seen major shutdowns. I haven't heard of people. I've heard individual cases here and there. But if people are going to get kicked off of Patreon, it's going to be us for the Palestine stuff. And so like why it hasn't happened, or we haven't gotten a whiff of it. I'm trying to think through like the material consequences for Patreon and for Silicon Valley. And you wonder if it's like, if that's a red line for them. That like, don't fuck our shit up. We don't care the way you do, and we don't have to. But Americans has been destroying itself in the name of protecting this entity for the last how many years now. So it's also like, it's not a rational beast. So that's been my question throughout all of this.
I'm going to put a pin in that because I think we should talk about that. But Lara, I wanted to hear from you, like on the self-censorship and the psychological piece of that, or whatever else you wanted to throw in.
Yeah, thanks. So I just kind of want, you won the appeal, and that's fantastic. But I just kind of want to put a fine point on why it's important for us to be having these conversations publicly and have a public-facing conversation, because I think we can scale up from, like Sina was saying, on the individual level, and then Jared was sharing that, it lives inside of you, right? It comes to live inside of you, and it lodges within you. And this is part of what carceral discipline is, and it's part of internalizing the state, where like they don't have to do very much, right, for us to sort of fall in step. But we can scale up and say that this idea of like self-censoring, and then being careful about who you talk about, what names you say, who gets to, appear in terms of geographies, places in the world, fights for liberation, actual figures who are real people, then that's also a way in which carceral and settler colonial logics repeat themselves on the structural level that then are showing up in these individual ways. You're disappearing people, literally, by being asked. We're like brought into these impossible choices, partially because also monetization is locked up in sort of making a living for oneself. And so capital is a part of that. But I really want to sort of trace the actual underlying processes here, is that, yes, there's a psychological way in which we are self-censoring, but the action, the actual impact of that is writing entire regions and peoples and movements out of history, right? And rewiring an archive of reality. This is precisely what settler colonial reality bending is it's a seduction and invites us into all these ways, and why we have to be militant about resisting that, because the actual impact is a reworking of what's actually unfolding in real time. Like, there is a person called Hassan Nasrallah I'm sorry. It's a fucking reality. And I think the invitation for us to erase people, it's not a big jump to sort of look at that and say, what is the actual political history of that? And what's the impact for our movements? What's the impact for our futures? What are the impacts for the commitments we have politically? So that's the piece that I'm thinking about. And again, why I'm so appreciative that you're like, no, let's have this conversation, because I think it would be way too simplistic and flatten it if we're saying it's just about getting demonetized or it's just about us sort of self-censoring on this level. The ripple effects are meant to actually derail and detract from political and revolutionary commitments. And that's why it's important for us to track these things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to kick it to Musa, but I just want to say quickly that thank you for that, because one of the things that I did want to just say, and I think I said it in one of the group texts today, was like that, what you were laying out in that piece, right? Like, there's a genocide going on in the world. Like, I'm sorry, like, people seem to be aware of this, but obviously we have a government that is in a full denial of this, fact. And states really aren't resisting it, right? Or the states that are at all involved in it are designated as supporters of terror, right? So we're not supposed to talk about them. We're not supposed to talk about Iran or Yemen, right? And other than that, it is non-state actors that are resisting the genocide, right? And so if you say that you cannot, praise, right? This is their language, that you cannot say that those non-state actors are doing something positive, then think about the ways that warps our morality and the way that, like, we're talking about something that the whole world agrees is the worst form of crime, the worst form of war crime. And we can't talk about the people who are resisting it as if what they're doing is good, right? And like that is the reality that they are trying to impose. And I think it's just, and I do want to say this too, because I think that there are probably a lot more people who are aware of all of that, who also self-censor and don't say those things, right? Because they're like, look, I don't want to get my YouTube demonetized, or I don't want to lose my career or anything else, right? Because I piss off the wrong folks by saying something that we can all see, and that's really the context too in which I wanted to talk about it, because those are the stakes too, So yeah, anyway, Musa, I want you to jump in too.
Yeah, I mean, the stakes are incredibly high. And I mean, I think for the last year, I've been repeating this line in my sleep. Comrade Fidel Castro said, we're in a ceaseless battle of ideas that the imperialists have waged upon us, and we have no choice but to fight back on that arena, right? And so much of like the Zionist project, for example, is not just about destroying the Palestinians themselves physically. It's assaulting their history, their very language. So much is held in language. Every time, I'm a radio host on a local channel here, and there's a high school show that's all high schoolers who run the show every other week. It's a very great show, but they go on air and say words like unalived, great, right? They're speaking in TikTok self-censorship. And it's wonderful that these are high schoolers who are talking about Palestine. They're talking about Cuba. They're talking about the prison here in Georgia. But also I'm listening to them self-censor themselves in ways that is the ripple effect that was just mentioned. They're not even thinking any deeper of the fact that they're actually not even on TikTok and they can say all of these words that they're trying to self-censor. And so, I think as organizers, the question on us, who, if we, tote the line between organizers and journalists or media worker, is what are we willing to sacrifice, right, in this specific arena? And then are concessions necessary to spread the word? Like, I think of what the resistance has sacrificed in many places around the world fighting against colonialism, and then what they had to calculate for those sacrifices. And I'm wondering if people in the Westoids, as Sina was saying, I'm wondering if people who claim to care about these situations, the brutal genocide that we've witnessed now going on, since 1948 plus, but intensified since October 7th. I'm wondering if people have actually sat down to think about these calculations for themselves, for their organizing, for their collectives, for their media collectives, for their organizations, and so forth. Because that's sort of the dialectical other side of the equation. It's not just the self-censorship. It's not just the conscious or subconscious watching what you're saying. But then on the flip side, it's what are the strategic and calculated decisions you do feel that you need to make despite whatever risks may come. And so I think that's a much more difficult conversation for a lot of people. It's one that people have not, I think, in many ways considered. And then two, I don't think we can glaze over the fact that, as it was stated earlier, it is liberals who are really leading the charge. If I were to be a guest live on CNN and I were to say, something even moderately positive about the Palestinian resistance, I might leave the CNN studio in handcuffs, right? And then at the same time, there are several so-called free speech journalists who have spent many, many years building campaigns where it's free speech except for Palestine, free speech except for imperialism. This is something Glenn Ford talked a lot about. And so how can we have this class of liberals, free speech journalists, commentators, and pundits who intentionally and necessarily evade these primary contradictions? And so, yeah. And then also, I think there's through threads between everything that's been said in terms of various censorships faced or experienced. And when Jared hit me up, what I said, I was like, well, you better get on Patreon, and you better do your little 1-2 step over to Patreon more heavily. And he was like, well, even that is not the safe space, quote unquote, that we once thought it was. And that perhaps it's only a matter of time until they have the infrastructure for larger, more mass surveillance of what's being posted on there. So the very last thing I'll say too is whoever is out there on our side, that is the tech people who know how to build apps from scratch and all of those kind of things, we have to be thinking about, if we want to build sort of cultural and media autonomy, how do we also create the platforms that could build and sustain that as well? But I'll pause there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The on the Patreon point, this is just my guess, right? Is that they've put in place the guidelines. They're hoping for self-censorship. That they were probably pushed to put those guidelines in place, right? But I think that you kind of touched on it, and I think I can't remember, Musa, if you said this or Sina did, one of you, but I don't think technologically yet they have the kind of surveillance system built in to Patreon that YouTube does. Where YouTube has, somebody mentioned, I think Resistance is Fertile, shout out to them, mentioned in the chat that Milikowski announced that they would turn up the algorithm heat up a few days back, and the school never bluffs. I don't know exactly what that is in reference to, but that's the thing, is that they have the infrastructure on YouTube to, like, all of our stuff is heavily surveilled. I mean, the whole, even just the simple monetization, demonetization of videos, at most it takes them a few hours to have, like, at least had an AI review of the entire episode. And often it's done by the time I get off the live stream, where they've already said, like, yay or nay. And that's just on an episode basis. I mean, and this is part of it too, is this is what I think to me today, like, even though this was really a warning that they gave me, but it was a warning with a 90-day suspension, right? So it was automatically like, you're sanctioned, you get nothing. And like, if you play well in the sandbox for the next 90 days, like maybe we'll give it back to you, kind of thing. But that, like, that feeling is just like it's not, it doesn't feel like a warning. Like, they could have just said, oh, hey, you can't make this a public post. There's something in it that will cause you to, lose monetization, or that we don't allow. And they don't even do that. Like, that was what was really fascinating to me about the post, is that I had not made it public. So nobody could see it at that point, and they slapped my whole channel down just for that. Go ahead, Jared.
But no, but again, it's like when the police have that, whatever that line is, when they'll say something like, you may avoid the charge, but you're not going to avoid the trip downtown, whatever it is. There's some line that I don't remember, that they say, where, yeah, you may not go to prison, you may not actually get a full trial, but you're going to spend a night in jail. You're going to get the ride with the handcuffs in the back of the car, and even if it's just a quick turnaround and we release you, it's still going to be we're just going to let you know what it is, and that's and again, I don't think it's that deep for I don't think I'm breaking new ground here when I say that obviously what we will see with Patreon will mirror its growing popularity and use. The reason they call it the good old days with YouTube is because YouTube was had a different relationship to I forgot how Sina, you said the media body or monster or whatever it is. YouTube had a different relationship at that point. If Patreon grows and becomes a rival or something similar, it will increase, those terms will start to get a little more and a little more. And as the Alphabet Boys and others get more involved in this, that, and the third, and whoever, I just was looking it up, and it says they're not even a public company yet. So it may just be a matter of time, but yeah, anyway, so I would look forward to follow that trajectory. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right, anything else folks want to say? Otherwise, I'm going to share some of the gulag questions that I got, that I had to answer, and then we can laugh about those. But we can jump into other things. Sina, did you have anything else you wanted to get to?
No. I mean, I'm happy to see the gulag questions. It's so, I cannot believe we are ruled over just the most middling, like, wallpaper eating, boring, like technocrat 22-year-olds like you've ever met. And I can't believe, like, this is the fate of our species, like that we ended up in this situation where, yeah, like, you can't even say out loud, the country, the ethno-state, the precious ethno-state is doing the worst thing you can do, and you can't even say it's bad. You're not allowed.
Can I
And
also
what's so
just
I will say this: what's amazing about Americans, this is the whole point of American identity. Like, it seems to, like, it goes to, like, the heart of this. Like, it goes to the idea of, like, you can say whatever you want, but you can't. Like, you can't, and you're not allowed. And, like, the sooner, like, Americans specifically realize this, not like realize, they know, but like that they say it out loud, that you're not allowed. Like, everything we heard about communist governments, about regimes, like, that's us. Like, that's, like, this is your "are we the baddies" moment that Americans need to have. And the ethno-state being so unpopular, even among, like, largely disinterested Americans from foreign policy. Like, it's that bad that they, like, turned off. I just saw something like 3 in 4 voters, like, even, or like 3 in 4 Democrats want an end of sale weapons. Like they're going against, like, a huge majority of the country. And I guess my question is, like, will the media regime aspect of it follow suit? Because it is irrational to do this stuff. YouTube, like, benefits from our clicks. Like, YouTube benefits from the people who watch our shows. So it's not in their interest to do this stuff. Like, it doesn't make sense. But an end of the empire isn't like a rational thing. It doesn't have rational qualities. It does irrational things, like destroy itself in the name of destroying this, like protecting this little ethno-state from, you know, bad words.
Yeah, I mean,
Can
go ahead. Yeah.
just sorry, real quick. At some point, I would like to maybe talk more about Sina's last point there. I don't know that I fully agree, and I think that would be a fun line of inquiry to follow at some point. But I just wanted to highlight and say this is why I'm happily the other Jared. I think I want to emphasize, seriously, I want to emphasize just as one other example as to why that when this happened to us, I was enraged to the point that I didn't do what you're doing here, which is have this public conversation. I didn't it was a little bit different with us being a collective, this and a third, but it wasn't just me. But I was so enraged that I didn't even think to take screenshots of this ridiculous gulag test. Like that, I want to commend you for having the forethought and the calm, because I was over there just clicking and staring and reading, just enraged. Like, how dare you? And to see this point, like, think about who is making me do this. Who are you? But anyway, so salute to you for that as well. I think because this is about to be funny.
Yeah, I mean, salute and commend to you. And really quickly, too, something that Lara said that I think, you know, there are objective facts and objective truths, right? Like there are resistance groups fighting. As you said, there's objectively a genocide taking place, right? These are objective facts. And the battle over, I mean, I think of like African Stream, right? African Stream was one of the most important media projects of the last 20 years, maybe 30 or 40. And overnight, the liberal administration shut it down, right? And so even when I was at RT and we weren't facing outright censorship, there was an air of paranoia that would dictate what stories I was allowed to produce and not produce, right? There was the Venezuelan embassy was being taken over by US-based gusanos. And because they were afraid if we covered the story too much, then they would think the Russian government was involved with it. Then so there was a censorship of stories that wasn't even dictated to us, that we were just doing ourselves at some point. And so I just really wanted to highlight that point, that like there's the self-censorship even makes you yourself, when you believe in the objective truth, start to avoid it and talk around it and find ways to sort of slip it in there here and there, right? And so that it really elides actual material reality and objective truth at some point. And I do think you doing streams like this is so important. And also shout out to Black Liberation Media, because y'all been demonetized for a long minute now, but somehow you're still about to hit 50K followers, right? Despite search engine suppression. So shout out to y'all as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as Lara said in the private chat, your shirt, Musa, is awesome. Love the shirt. All right. I'm gonna show a couple of these. Musa, I know you do have to duck out in like 10 minutes, and feel free to do so if you need to. We can keep going for a little while if other people, you know, want to, but I did want to show these because this is just funny stuff. So, you know, of course, like we have, the argument is that we have supported a violent criminal organization, and so we have to take a test to prove that we know how to differentiate, how to engage with terrorist organizations in our content on YouTube. And so these are some of the questions. I missed screenshotting the first one, but I did get, this was the second one. So the second one is Jenna uploads a video montage of video game clips set to an ISIS-produced song for part of the video. ISIS is a government designated terrorist organization, right? And is it a violation? No, it isn't, right? So they're all like kind of true or false questions. This one, for the record, if anybody's ever in it, and I don't know, I may get in trouble for revealing the answers to these questions, but that's all right. I say to YouTube, I'm helping them disseminate their community guidelines here by helping people know the correct answer is that this is a violation because you're using the ISIS song. So don't do that, children. And you know, and that's the part I think too. Like all of these examples are, you know, it's like ISIS, it's Boko Haram. You know, let's see. Aaron uploads a documentary he made that describes and condemns atrocities committed by different terrorist groups. The video shows a clip of Boko Haram produced footage. Boko Haram is a government designated terrorist organization. So this one is not a violation, right? Because, and this is the important piece that they're really trying to hammer home in most of these questions, right? Is that Aaron condemns, right? And that is the key piece, right? Is that they're trying to instill in us that, I mean, obviously I do condemn the actions of ISIS and Boko Haram, but like that, what they're trying to instill in us, right, is this sort of like anyone that we designate as a terrorist organization, like you must condemn them, right? And if you're going to talk about it, there has to be a condemnation. And I think that's the part too that's like really problematic, because I think the big issue with this war on terror language, right, is that it doesn't take into account even legitimate things that have been won in terms of international law around rights of peoples to resist occupation or rights to liberate themselves from colonialism, right? And so all of that, you know, the United States basically doesn't recognize that, right? Like, I mean, there was a point in the Cold War when they said they did, and basically they were just trying to get countries to come into their orbit, right? As opposed to falling into the orbit of the Soviet bloc or the non-aligned movement. But like, they've never really supported this, right? And now it's just, especially in the post 9/11 world, it's just a hammer for them to hit anyone that goes against imperialism, you know. And so it's like they purposely select groups that they're like, oh, you know, yeah, I don't want to play video games with ISIS music, like, you know. But here's one. There is one more I'll show. I'm just going to show one more because this one was the most interesting to me, in which they don't name a group, but they name an action. So this was the last one. It's Sammy is a vlogger who uploads a video of a hostage taking filmed by the perpetrators. Sammy explains who is in the footage and the events that happened leading up to it. She
This is
criticizes
so
the
fucking
perpetrators.
pathetic, man. Holy
She,
shit. This is so
she,
pathetically
she,
Zionist.
she criticizes the
Jesus.
perpetrators and demands the release of the hostages, right? So obviously we
Oh my
know
God.
which one that
Pathetic.
is trying to reference us to. So anyway, I'm not going to show more of
So
them, but there's
pathetic.
7 of them. They're all in that kind of vein, right? And again, the enticement in it is to say, oh, if I'm going to follow this policy, I have to make sure to add a condemnation to whatever I'm displaying, you know. So anyway, there was one even actually that was like about fundraising, was like you could post a ISIS fundraiser, but as long as you condemn it, which to me I was like, that seems like a bad policy. Like why would I want to post a fundraiser for a terror organization, even if I'm talking about it negatively? Seems like that would be, you know, not a good thing to do, especially since that's, you know, it's criminalized, right, to fund any terror organization, right? Which again, like, I guess this is also the important thing that maybe, Musa, before you jump out, like, because the material support laws, right, are also something, or the sanctions, right? These are also things that come into place around places like Cuba, around, you know, other places, you know, Iran, other places where there are, you know, governments that the US sanctions, or you know, groups that they do.
Yeah, I mean, I really can't believe my friend and comrade Jay Beware went through a re-education camp. I mean, this evil socialist country is really going downhill. It's really wild. This is I mean, no, I think that everything we're describing in terms of censorship is a microcosm of what sanctions do to the global South, right? Even to the point you said you're temporarily demonetized, but if you be good for 90 days, we might, right, unsuspend you and remonetize you. I mean, this is quite literally the game that they played with Cuba very recently to have some prisoner exchanges and things like that. Cuba has been cooperating with Border Patrol and various U.S. agencies for several years now for diplomacy reasons, under the guise that the sanctions will be eased. Of course, it never has been eased. This is what they do, like when they're using aid as a bargaining chip for Palestinians who are facing, mass starvation. And so I think what we're, to steal Jared's words, actually, the colonial media apparatus is playing out in real time, right? The technology has shifted and changed, but this is still the colonial relationship of sanctions and imperial domination. Even, the Gulag re-education screenshot you shared, choosing to use the name Sami, which is Sami is like a very extremely common Palestinian name. Like these things are very clear and straightforward. And so even I remember I told Jared in the text, my Cash App account, I haven't had a Cash App for about 3 years now, which sucks because everything in Atlanta is Cash App. Because I gave money to a friend who was in the US at the time, who happened to be a Cuban doctor. And they're actually monitoring Cuban doctors now, whose crime, right, is giving medicine. And so what happens is sanctions regimes at a high level, we think of high level suffering, we think of high level starvation, lack of medication, but also people's ability to maneuver, to move, to have financially support one another, and then to share and spread information. This is all halted, right? This is all stunted. This is itself a form of violence and epistemicide in and of itself. Right? The fact that Palestinians cannot freely get on YouTube and live stream and talk about whatever they want, from resistance to surviving underneath the genocide, whatever it might be, that in and of itself is a form of epistemicide, because you're halting the flow of ideas and the knowledge production that comes from that, And so I don't have too much more to say, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but I think what we really need to think about is these platforms at large, and what are we doing with our audiences so that if a video has 10,000 views, how do all 10,000 of those listeners know what happens when they come and there is no millennials or killing capitalism, when there is no Groundings podcast? The day that comes when X, Y, and Z is gone, what do we do next? And how can we preemptively create that infrastructure if it is possible? That's sort of where my mind is and where I'm thinking right now. When I go to the re-education camps, I might, this is okay, but here's another question real quick. Who do they alert if you answer all those questions wrong, right? If you're asked questions about supposed terror and you answer incorrectly for 6 out of 7 of them, do you now have an FBI agent knocking at your door? Do you now get a call from DHS, right? I mean, I think these are really, really serious questions, especially as we move into this techno-fascist turn, that we should really be thinking very deeply on. If Jared Ware had played the ISIS music, is there someone at your door? So anyways, I'll leave it at that. Shout out to some comrades on the screen. I appreciate all of y'all.
Yeah, appreciate you, Musa. I know you do have to jump, but thank you so much for joining us and for, all your reflections. I think they deepened this conversation. So, and folks, if you don't follow the Groundings podcast, please do. And I know you're on Black Liberation Media more and more nowadays too, right? On like the Remix Morning Show and stuff like that sometimes. So
yeah. Shout out to Renee. I am around a lot more, and got some stuff on the very close horizon with them as well. So yeah, for sure.
Right
I think
on.
I'm a big fan. So yeah, I'm a peace out though.
Yeah, and we have another conversation coming probably soon. So we'll hope folks keep an eye out for that. Hopefully we'll get that on. All right. Thanks, Musa. All right, everybody. What do you got, Jared?
I just wanted to say that to Musa's last question, I mean, I don't think we have to speculate. They will be at the door. I mean, there's already obviously been a whole bunch of examples of people going back, even 20 years now. You say the wrong thing on a microphone and camera, they will find you. So I just think that, but that is a good. It is a logical line of reasoning to follow, that they surveil what is said here. You get the little warnings. If you fail the little re-education attempt, that's it. Oh,
Wow.
wow. All
So
right. Yeah. Word.
Orasami Burton, Professor Orasami Burton, shout out to him. I think, yep, I did put tip of the spear behind me intentionally. Is scheduled to do an IG live with Black Liberation Army veteran, Black Panther Party veteran from the New York chapter at 7 p.m. and the app is not letting them broadcast, and they think it's a censorship issue. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot that I think that a lot of this stuff is really starting to tighten up on these different platforms, and yeah.
Can I just say also that to this point, it is that it's doing you were showing those questions. And I think it's really important for us to highlight that none of this, we know it's not innocent, just like, not letting Ari's IG go live is not innocent, just like sort of shutting down, just that there will be an agent at your door. All these things are not innocent, but to really name without any sort of doubt that this is the psychic work of empire, right? That there's an actual effect that's happening. And that's because these questions already exist in an infrastructure of associative processes. That somewhat cryptic question, none of us are sitting there being like, I wonder what hostages we're talking about. Everybody knows what hostages are being alluded to. It's not even unconscious. It lives within an infrastructure that needs very little to be animated within us. And we have all these associative processes. The other associative process is to flatten and sort of make a parallel between ISIS and resistance groups that are fighting for the liberation of their indigenous lands in response to, decades of oppression by settler colonial regime. The point of it is so that people are drawn into, at the very least, having to go through and expend the psychic energy to say, wait a second, there's a difference between that. I mean, it busies us up, right? And it makes us have to do the extra psychic work to de-link ourselves from all these associations that feed a particular type of infrastructure that does the work of empire, right? And that does the work of US hegemony, and that does the work of a regularization, normalization of the United States being able to name who constitutes a terrorist and who doesn't, and who gets to be the one who gets to fight for their homeland and all this sort of shit. I mean, look at the DHS fucking bullshit that they put out every single day. But these are the associative processes that we're being drawn into to have to say, oh no, to parse out that these are the folks that are the ones we should be worried about. These are the ones we have to be, afraid of. These are the ones that has a real life impact. It has a real life impact in terms of what Musa was saying earlier about what you're willing to risk and who you're going to put yourself on the line for and what you're going to stand up for and the kind of world we end up building. Right? All of that is part of the infrastructure. And that's why, again, moving away from any of this being just a corporate strategy or innocent, there's ideological work that's being done. And to Sina's point earlier, ideological work contains contradictions. Yes, it is about creating capital and doing all of that, but it'll cannibalize itself just as readily because those contradictions shore up and stabilize something larger. And that larger project is empire and hegemony and US exceptionalism.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Sina.
Yeah, no, I think that at the end of the day is that there's no rational way that the US empire goes down. It's going to be like an increasingly irrational set of actions. And our professional life is wrapped up in these media spheres that are one of the like, you know, one of the arms of the US empire, right? Like this entire internet is a US like defense, what, DARPA net or whatever, like defense arms research project. Like we are the child. We are sitting here talking to each other because some like wasps in, you know, God knows where in the 50s were like, how can we devise a method where the entire network of the world runs through our infrastructure and we can literally monitor like key clicks, keystrokes in real time, which is what they could do as of 2005, guys. Like look up the program XKeyscore. Okay, it's one of the Snowden project, one of the things that Snowden relieved. We are in a censorship, like this whole, we are in this strange bifurcated moment where this surveillance regime that requires us to feel comfortable enough to talk and divulge every errant thought, every contradictory impulse, everything, and we need to record it into our phones diligently for them. But at the same time, they also need to terrorize us into not committing thought crimes. Okay, so that's like a strange interactive way, because your first thought, and I thought about this a lot during the Iran, the attack on Iran, which was, and I think about this a lot before that, but it really hit home, which was the entire digital infrastructure of Iran runs through Western apps. Every WhatsApp message, every Telegram like image is sent to the West. It's archived and sent to the West. You think it's not hard to find collaborators when you have that level of intelligence at the individual level, right? And so like my own thing in the aftermath of the last attacks was like, man, Iranians got to get off the internet. Like they got to get off. They got to get off iPhones. They have to cut themselves off. Now, I would be laughed out of the room if I said that in Iran, because how are you going to do that, buddy? You can't even go 3 seconds without checking your Samsung phone. Like, how can you disconnect from this like dopamine fucking matrix that we're all part of? That is not just dopamine, but like connecting our family lives, how it maps our inner beings. Every literal step we take is monitored and like and archived somewhere, saying like, oh, today you took 2,000 steps, sir. Congratulations. But really, it's like you went here, you stopped at this moment, you went to this mall, like. Even, you know, in buildings, in like malls and stuff, in stores, they can track your phone through Bluetooth even if it's not on. They can find you through Bluetooth. Guys, like all of us are as surveilled as the Iranians are, and it's turned against us. So like we have to have a serious conversation about what that means. And I don't think we've ever encountered something like in the history of human life, where our inner thoughts, our inner sanctum, right, and our ability to articulate with other human beings in the privacy of our domestic sphere even, is monitored by multiple listening devices, not one. Oh, there's also, you know, the camera in your, you know, that microphone in your TV, it's like they can make it into a microphone. Like that hack was released. Like they can listen to you even if your phones are off. Like, this level of surveillance has never been achieved, and we are in the middle of it. And yeah, like this is just like, this is the bigger question here of like, how do we exist in that realm? But I like putting that bigger question aside, I would also say, like, I want to close with this, is that the lesson from all of this for us, for people like us, okay, for like the freaks, is like the thing in Ferris Bueller, the wastoids, the freaks, the jocks, the sluts, like we're all the fringe, like that's us. Like we need to replicate ourselves, okay? You need to make more shows. You need to, like, I know this goes diametrically, sounds like I'm going diametrically against what I just said, which was we need to get off these platforms. But I think in this moment where the crimes of these regimes that are ruling over us are so severe and they're only accelerating, that we need to replicate this model and everybody just makes their own shows and spreads. because that they can shut down individual channels, but you recreate one. So like if the lesson of like Iranians, and like what's one way you get around sanctions? You just like ship your shit to Turkey and you're like, oh, these apricots, they're Turkish. I don't know where they might. We don't know where exactly, but like you can get around the sanctions regime. And one way is to like replicate your message, find like articulations, and like even if you have a show that's like 80 people, that's better than 0. So like if people are listening to this and you have like something to say, like go and start your own damn show. Like replicate it, do something, because like the goal of this is to find one of us one by one, squish us, and go one by one and make an example. Be like, see that Lara? See what we did to her? We squished her. We exiled her to the UAE, to Dubai. Okay, we had the power to do that. Then we make an example of her, and we'll make an example of you.
Excuse me.
Doha, excuse me. I'm sorry, you're exiled to Qatar. Okay, it's like they, and how many careers have they ended? Like how many, and we have to keep rolling. Like if they shut down East is a Podcast, I'll just do, okay, East is a Podcast 2, the sequel. Well, what are they going to do? Like, okay, they'll shut me down again, but you recreate yourself and reinvent, and that audience will find you. Not everyone, but a lot of them will find you. And if you cultivate an audience, if you cultivate, I don't want to say following because that's dumb. Exactly. Like, like I don't want to say that stuff, but like something like that is that the job of us is to keep talking, keep these platforms articulating the thought crimes and finding people who are like-minded. Like you go look at the Tanky Therapy chat, guys. Go look at the Tanky Therapy comments on our videos. People lose their minds at what it means to them because we are one of the few channels working on this genocide who are articulating it in a certain way, and people appreciate that. So I would say to the listeners, I mean, we're small, but you can replicate it and you can grow. And it doesn't take much to start your own show. Honestly, it doesn't. Like you can pull it off. So consider that. I mean that sincerely. And it's better to have more of us than just have a limited number and we're professionals and monitor. Like we're not libs. We don't have the ability to be like libs and like have like this professional class in the corner who do this work for them. And they have these, big platforms. We have to build our own platforms. They get shut down. You build more. Like that's it. Like this is our guerrilla warfare. Like not to make too fine of a point on it, but like you think Palestinians give up when like one of their tunnels gets smashed? Like you leave, you have other tunnels, you go dig new ones. Like this is the story of like being into resistance. So without saying anything that could get you into trouble, I am there.
Yeah, but let's be fair. Palestinians don't have to put up with Google censors and my bad.
Sorry, Jay. I couldn't resist.
No, my bad. It was inappropriate.
You heard it here, folks. Sina, I'm going to enlist you to help me produce a podcast called Psychic Militancy.
Do it. Come on, do it. I've been telling her this forever.
Yes, we will do it.
All right. I just wanted to shout this out. Claudia O'Brien, shout out to her in the chat, mentioned that the Black Agenda Report is teaming up with Africa Stream actually to premiere a documentary. Ajamu Baraka is in it, and members of the Communist Party in Kenya on a trip looking at Kibera, Africa's largest slum, which is, I believe, right outside of Nairobi. So definitely check that out. That's at 7 tonight. So we'll make sure to get off before that. But yeah, wanted to make sure people saw that. Right on. I don't have too much else. There was a point earlier in the conversation, Jared, where you wanted to talk about a potential disagreement with Sina. Do you remember what was that about?
Just over the if I heard correctly, like, but my point is just always that like they're not. I think the profit motive, when you were saying it benefits Google if we're liking and clicking and watching, if I understood you correctly, suggesting that there was some sort of business or profit model, or incentive, and I always think that that's secondary at most to a broader political purpose for the function of media, so that I'm always on the side that they're happy to take financial losses if necessary to secure an ideological victory or secure a boundary ideologically. So that was my only that was really it. Yeah.
I think you're right. No, I think you're right. I don't think it's not a principled stance, but there is a reputational thing to all these social media apps. And if they get that reputation of, oh, this isn't safe, like that's, now mind you, it isn't safe to us, resistoids. Are we really that big of a number for them that they'll like miss us? I don't know. That's like the question in my head. But I do feel that like ultimately, like they need us. These companies are suffering from the same laws of everything, of like capitalism, which is the law of like the declining rate of profit, right? Like they don't get as much now as they did 20, 15 years ago when Silicon Valley was much higher. Like the social medias are all dead, the legacy ones at least. And you know, they wouldn't even let TikTok be a thing. They had to clamp down on it because it was too popular and not under their control. So like the US media machine, regime censorship machine, which is to say, is reaching new heights of insanity. And obviously the entity is like protecting the entity and the entity's poor reputation, and they're like not able to stop the torrent of hate against their crimes and disgust. That like even then, despite all of this, I mean, this is the most remarkable thing, is that the censorship is not just like on censorship for us, it's also not talking about it. It's the turning away. That's been the remarkable act of these libs, because if they just showed some footage, it would be good for their ratings, because that would kill, right? But the entity is more important. I mean, that's the irrational part, is that these systems aren't working by their own logic. So then there's a deeper logic, which is protect the pedo state. Like that's it. Is the American, I guess my question is the American empire really gonna burn all of it that it has left to protect the ethno state? And really, to the point of these two parties destroying themselves. You pointed out the Epstein stuff is killing them. I mean, we know American politicians don't care about how people feel, but I don't know. This system is a strange this American system is very strange to begin with, and its operation is wacky on a normal time. But these last 2 years, it's like, what is happening? Like, what is this, you know? And and it's all, yeah. Anyways, I'm meandering at this point.
I just want to say quickly a couple things. I mean, one, we haven't mentioned yet the broad scale assassination of Palestinian journalists, which obviously is like the most intense version of this censorship that we are on the very, very far end of. Like, you get a warning that we threaten you, that we might not let you make money on your YouTube channel for 90 days. And then like, it's the consequences for us of doing this stuff are just like minuscule in terms of the, 250 to 300 Palestinian journalists who have been assassinated during this genocide. The other thing I want to say too is, to your question, Sina, and I mean, this is the broader scale thing, and we're not going to have time to litigate it all, but I do think that and I don't know where Jared or Lara would weigh in on this, but I do think Max Isle has made this argument, right, that yes, it's probably possible for US imperialism to articulate a new form of global capitalism that does not include the so-called state of Israel as, its kind of, you know, fascistic weapon in the Middle East, right? But it's very undesirable to them. Like, they really clearly don't want to do it, right? And so, he always says, well, that's changing that calculus is going to be very hard. And so I think when we think about things just in terms of profit too, like, that's sometimes where we miss, is it's like, it's not just about the profit of one company, right? It's about what does it cost them to like re-articulate a set of alliances and bases and who they're going to give their weapons to and who they're going to promote to sow chaos in a region or whatever else, right? And so I think that that's the part, I think, of it's not the only thing. I mean, I think that clearly there's the lobby, there's other elements, right? Of there's the infusion of Zionists into these tech firms. There's a lot of these different factors here. But I tend to think that it's about the maintenance of a system more so than the profit of an individual company. And so if they see a company that plays an important role, people will step in to help that company out too, even if their numbers are not as good. Like Patreon, I'm sure venture capitalists could come in, and say, hey, we're going to float you on this, but in order to do that, we need you to, cut out all of this resistance media. I do think there's a reputational question a bit because of how many people are just horrified, right, by what has happened, what has been allowed to happen in Gaza, that when people censor media and stuff like that associated with it, that has an ability to piss people off, even not necessarily the most liberal people. But there's weird stuff going on where you have people on the right who are talking about Palestine and they don't agree with us about much of anything, but there's a weird censorship thing going on there. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I just think that the larger point I would make is not that, but it's just that I think that it's more about the maintenance of the system.
The last thing I'll say along these lines is that, I've said this before, is that what the last 2 years have done is just sort of saturate and open up and make it more possible that a large swath of people are incurring the same sort of violence that so many people in the context and history of the United States have lived in these parallel universes that have always been under surveillance, that have always been under attack. I mean, you don't even have to go very far. You go Black Panther parties, the Brown Berets, the Young Lords, the American Indian movement. Anybody who has ever had an eye towards revolutionary consciousness and political action have always been under the threat that we are now just seeing being regularized and normalized and scaled up to a point where like everybody in every arena is thinking about this. And on some level, I think it makes it more clear what our fight is and how deeply imbricated this machine is, that nobody is free from that. I mean, post 9/11, we saw this, right? People's library cards, like this shit's not new for the United States. It's not new for a settler colonial regime. And the reason why they're going to die in supporting the ethno-state is because it's little fucking proxy. It's like, it's the same system. And I'm not the first person, obviously, that has said this, but it bears for us to repeat that, go back to it and remember, so that we demystify all of this sort of confusion we have about why is this happening? Why is this? It's happening because it follows a similar logic. And if you upend the logic of the settler colonial state, the Zionist apparatus, you're also then sort of saying that you're upending the logic of the genocide that took place in this settler colony and continues to erase and atomize and do all these sorts of things, right? So again, just a return back to ground us, to align us, to understand that if nothing else, this is just a portal that's been opened where most people now live under this regime, while before it was sort of reserved for people who are, racialized or actively engaged in armed resistance against the state. It's become so much bigger now, and the net is so much wider, partially because of the ideological work that's happening.
Yeah, right on. Jared, any kind of we can kind of wind down. Any closing comments from you?
No, just it's always good to catch up with folks and to meet and build with folks that I haven't had a chance to before. So I appreciate that, and I largely agree and appreciate everything that's been said. I mean, this has been. I mean, we do have to find new ways to prepare for these things, to counteract them, and I continue to struggle just personally with how best to engage and where not to show up, and how it's. But I like what Sina was just saying also about just they knock one down, we put up another one and keep it moving. And so yeah, but I am glad that you all were reinstated, even whatever. And I look forward to tuning into many more shows on the re monetized and ungulagged millennials are killing capitalism.
We'll see. We'll see if we survive this episode or the next, right? And that's the thing. Like, it's just
And
like
that's how they want you to remember that. They say,
Yeah.
remember, anytime we want, we can erase you. Like
Totally.
that feeling is like something else.
It is very much for me like what my godfather has said about our personal lives. We're never surprised when we're asked to leave. We're only surprised by how long we're invited to stay.
That's a good one. Yeah, so folks, do support the Patreon, and there's also the Buy Me a Coffee link. Hopefully, we stay monetized, but I definitely appreciate folks who contribute in other places and other ways, because I do think that for one, again, like the ad revenue is actually not that much. It is a question for me constantly of like, is that even worth that, right? And I do think for anyone starting a channel, you should actually think about that, of whether you want to go that route, or because we did for 6 years, we didn't have any of that, and we were all Patreon based. That does require you to do a lot of begging, but which I'm doing again right now. But it is the thing is like, you have to figure out ways to, the more you do these things, the more you put work into them, and also the harder it is for you to get normie jobs. And so that's what, even if you're a guest like Lara. But so anyway, I just appreciate any support that people give. And obviously we are reinstated for now. I don't know, this is the thing, is it was very arbitrary how it was done. So it just implants this. It's like you said, Sina, it's like, is it a shot across the bow? Is it a warning? Like, I'm most baffled by the fact that they took it away, that they reinstated it. That's the most
It could be also just
confusing.
the specific case of Lara, because they seem to have a hang up on Lara specifically. Like Zionists are so petty. They just pick a few and they're like, let's do this one. Let's do this one. Because it happens with Red Nation a lot. And Melanie Yazzie, one of our hosts, it's usually her. And it's usually, and it's like, is it hard to game these systems that are like always poised to work against us? No. Does it cost the Zionist Canary Mission loser, like some like brace-faced nerd from like the University of Ohio, like sitting there getting paid $30 an hour to like snitch on his friends, like snitch on people? Like it doesn't take much. It's just more the mental headache of us fighting it off and defending ourselves, and so you're always on the back foot. But yeah, anyways. I have one thing to say.
Fuck them.
It's very fun. Yes, fuck them, and that's why you keep going. So fuck them. Kick me off the internet. Then I'll stop. Like the only person who can make me stop streaming is this guy. But like, I think the other thing is too is that, remember, it's the contradiction of all this, which is funny. They needed ISIS and all the other U.S. proxy forces to be online, to be successful online. They needed them in the early days. You pointed out to me, I think, maybe not it was you, but like there used to be just ISIS guys on Twitter, just hanging out. They were ISIS dudes. Like they were recruiting. They used their censorship technique to find individuals who would be good, and that's actually what a lot of what social media is for, is to identify like certain kinds of unsavory characters for dark pursuits, and then you find ways to lure them in. And it's not hard. It's not when you know their thoughts and you have their fucking search history, it's not hard to be like, oh, how much I hate Shia. Gee, I wonder how that guy ended up, like from Googling how much I hate Shia to ending up dead in Syria somewhere. Like that's a direct pipeline that's managed through Silicon Valley, aided through like the Pentagon and all these dark, like Blackwater, God knows where. Like the internet is a tool of imperial control. That's the reality, and we live on it. We make our careers on it. So that's the like structuring contradiction of this. But anyways, I'll stop. I'm repeating myself.
No, that was great. We always need like at least 3 or 4 Sina rants when we bring you on, my friend, and so you delivered as usual. So.
Just kidding. I'm like this naturally. Can you imagine what it's like to be around me?
Oh man, it's always good to be with you. Good to be with you, Lara. Jared, always
Thanks,
just
Jay.
appreciate people showing up, even as a like admittedly a kind of false flag operation on my monetization. But appreciate folks showing up in the chat and hope folks got something out of the conversation. Shout out to Musa again for great insights as well. And folks, make sure you check out all of these folks. I Mix What I Like, Black Liberation Media, The East is a Podcast, Lara's forthcoming, what's it called, Lara?
Psychic Militancy.
Psychic Militancy Podcast. All right, we're ready for it. And groundings, if I didn't mention it. All right, and then the Africa stream. So head over to, you got 12 minutes to take a break, and then head over to Black Agenda Reports YouTube channel and check out the Africa stream documentary on Kenya. All right, peace.